Over the past decade, we've seen funding for the IRS steadily being cut, and in the future, based on things we've heard Trump say, we know that we're likely to see even more of that. And those cuts have consequences. We've already seen those consequences, and it turns out that some extremely influential Americans love those consequences. So in this video, we're gonna break them down. First, I wanna show you the funding for the IRS. If we can bring up this chart, you see it's slowly getting steadily cut away. I mean, the thing is there that it's not that much money when you compare it to other parts of the budget. And when you realize that it is one of the few areas of government that brings in money, the idea that you should cut it to save money becomes somewhat ridiculous. So you see there that it's being inched down over the past few years. Now bring up this, it's gonna be a brief little summary. You can pause it later on YouTube if you want. You're seeing there reduced resources and services. So 13,000 fewer employees, 12,000 of those the enforcement staff. Lowest individual and business audit levels in a decade. We're gonna go into that. But at the same time, they also have to do far more. There's far more tax returns being filed. There are more important and necessary tax regulations, protections against fraud that they need to be in charge of. And so fewer people to do the work, more work needing to be done. And so should we be surprised that you end up with a chart like this next one, where over the course of the past 10 years, you see the overall level of enforcement, the level of corporate audits going down, and especially audits for the rich, briefly nudging back up there, but then dropping down once again. Now let's put this in concrete terms. For large companies, audit rates fell by nearly 50%, declining from 17.8% back in 2012 to 9.5%. 50% in just 4 years of those audits. Thankfully, I'm sure companies are not doing any funny business with their taxes, so no. It's quite all right. And then the numbers for individuals also fell as well. And what it turns out is going to happen in the near future is under Trump's budget, the IRS would experience another 14.1% funding cut starting in October of this year. So the funding gets cut, the audits go down on corporations and rich individuals, but shit, it looks like there's gonna be more of that. Does Trump not know that?
Yeah, so let's break this down in a couple of different ways. Number one, this is not by accident, it's on purpose. So, and number two, yes, there are frustrating examples of Democrats who also help their donors. Dime a dozen, I get it, right? But look at what the Republican Party does on a mass scale. So why does all those charts on audits and enforcement dip in 2011? Because Republicans won landslide election results in, or had landslide election results in 2010 elections. So the 2011 Congress is the first Republican Congress, and they go, that's it. We're not funding the IRS anymore. Our rich donors are gonna have a bonanza, and they can cheat on their taxes all they like, and they're very unlikely to get caught. On an individual level, it's now down to 0.7% of people being audited. Okay, so if you are David Koch, you think I have a 99.3% chance that I'm not gonna get audited. So I've got, what does he have? He has over $40 billion. So even if he fudges his taxes a little bit, he's going to save tens of millions of dollars, and very likely he has a 99.3% chance of getting away with it. If he wants to fudge him a lot, he can save hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps billions of dollars. Thank you very much, Republican Congress that I just bought. You gave me a great rate of return on my investment.
Free money.
Now, when you look at the corporation side, now if your chance of getting audited as a corporation is down to under 10%, you start to do math on that, and you have fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders, you almost have to break the law. Okay, now I know that they're not, by law, they're not supposed to, obviously, that's the whole point. But remember, they never go to jail. Even though corporations are human beings, no one ever goes to jail. So there's no actual consequences to any of the individuals who do this. In fact, they get bigger and bigger bonuses that year if the company makes more money. And if you think, hey, I only have about a 10% chance of getting audited. If I cheat on my taxes, I save billions of dollars a year. And if I get audited once every 10 years, the penalties would have to be 10x for it to not be worth it.
And we know they're not, even when even when it's not a mistake, but they actually break the law. Like if you launder money as a bank, for instance, if you dump a bunch of oil into the ocean, it's a tiny little penalty that you can just factor into the cost of doing business.
So if you're just talking about maximizing profits, which is the whole point of these corporations that we've built, now we've incentivized them to make sure they don't pay their taxes, because they will very likely get away with it. And even if they get caught at some point within those 10 years, it's still great business on their part to cheat on taxes. And it's not an accident. The corporations are the ones that funded the politicians. My conservative friends, you keep complaining about crony capitalism, and you keep complaining about corrupt politicians. You're 100% right about that. Who do you think corrupted them? It's right here in the numbers. The people who are getting rich off of their corruptions are the ones who paid them to be corrupt. And that leads us finally to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Now, what did Donald Trump say during the debates? He said, I bought all these guys before. I paid contributions, campaign contributions to them, and they did whatever I told them to do. And now that appealed to the right-wing voters. They're like, at least he's being honest about it. Yeah. And he hasn't been bought. He was the one doing the buying. That's not really any better.
No.
So remember, he avoided taxes, was it 18 or 19 years?
I believe it was 18.
Okay, 18 straight years he didn't pay taxes. By the way, we think that was legal, but we know he never shows us any of his taxes, so it's impossible to know. But a guy who, for 2 decades, found a way to avoid taxes, of course doesn't believe that the rich and billionaires and multinational corporations should pay taxes. He just doesn't believe in it. So he's gonna cut, and by the way, it destroys the deficit, because every dollar spent into the IRS brings you many dollars back. It's the one part of government where you spend money and the government gets more money, not less money.
Yeah.
So if by cutting the IRS, they're not saving money, that's an absolute provable lie.
They're saving the rich money.
They're saving rich and multinational corporations and their donors money, and they're costing all the rest of us that money. And you know how much they cost us just between 2008 and 2010? The difference between the taxes that were owed and the taxes that were not paid is $458 billion. And then they tell us that education for your kids, the American dream, is not practical and can't be done because Bernie Sanders' program to give free college education to your kids is $75 billion. $458 billion of taxes not paid by the rich. Well, that's fine, nothing we can do. $75 billion for your kids? Hell no, no way, no way.
But we gotta save money, so we cut another $1 billion from the IRS.
Which then costs us tens of billions of dollars. No, they're making choices, guys. And the choice is for the Republican Party, they love the rich. So the fact that that's not in everybody's head and as an absolute fact is unconscionable. The only reason it's not is because television sucks. And for decades now, television has refused to call it like it is. Look at where it is. Look at where the IRS gets cut. Look at where we stop getting revenue from those guys, from multinational corporations. Look at what multinational corporations did. They used to be 35% of the taxes paid. Now they're under 10% of the taxes paid for the overall taxes paid by all Americans.
And that is going to disappear if Trump gets his tax plan.
That's right.
That 10% is going to seem like some sort of socialist fantasy in a couple of years.
And television never tells you, of course the Republicans are for the rich. The rich are who finance their elections. That's who put them into power in the first place. So the Democratic Party has 1,000 problems. But the Republican Party is absolutely clear, and at the national level, totally hopeless. They will never serve you, and if you think they're serving you, you've been had, you've been took. They're taking from your wallet and giving it to the rich donors. And the fact that you can't understand that now is, well, it's because you were just in the wrong media. I hope nobody ever told you. Or if somebody told you and you're a sucker and you're like, oh, the Kochs have, and by the way, Soros and Bloomberg and the guys on the left too, they have $40 billion, they have $80 billion. But here's another $20 from me. Here's another $200 that I can't afford. Take my money, because God forbid the rich should pay taxes.
Yeah.
Once you become a member of the Young Turks, you're gonna be thinking,
Sarabies!
TYTnetwork.com/join.